Hey, what's up, Liron here. Thank you for joining me in today's video. I'm going to show you how to sign your watercolors, and you want to stick around till the end. I'll give you a sneak peek of this painting in progress, a bit of a complex one, but more on that in a second. So how to sign your watercolors. Actually, I'm not going to tell you exactly how to do it for an obvious reason. This really will depend on how you want to do it. So I've been actually playing around with some different ideas using a wax seal or all sorts of fun. There are people who make pre-made signatures. They just go and put the signature on. But I'm talking about the more normal, regular way of simply using a brush and mixing some paint and signing it. So the reason I'm doing this, which may sound like a strange video idea, is because a lot of people seem to be struggling with getting the consistency right, especially when using these types of rigger brushes. So I'm using a Lebanson rigger brush. This one's called Small Brown Synthetic. I will put, there's links to everything below. But yeah, so the way I like to do this is rigger brushes are thin. They don't have a lot of capacity usually. This is why I like this one, because it does have some nice capacity. You can also use a sword brush that has a thick base and a thin edge, so you have big capacity in the base and the thin edge you can still paint with. But the way I like to do this is make sure the brush is thoroughly wet. So I'm actually going to bring some water in from my bucket. So look at how this moves. I'm going to bring even more of this water. I'm just going to use phthalo blue here, and I like to push it to be dark enough because I just want to make sure I don't have to go over it again. That's the main issue you want to avoid, I think, because once I write it down and it looks graceful, drop the pencil, it looks graceful. I don't want to go over it again. So if you look at this is still quite light, actually, because I brought in a lot of water. So I'm going to grab a bunch more paint. Now, water to paint ratio is something, there's no way around just experimenting and trying it out for yourself to know what the right mixture is. The way I do this is by feel. When I feel the exact consistency that you're going to see here right now, this is what I go with. Now you'll have to find the one that works best for you. I don't think there's objectively one perfect way of doing it. But in any case, let me set this aside for a second, just for convenience sake. I'm going to show you. Hopefully you'll see it well. I'll make sure throughout. Then what I usually do is go with the brush. I'm writing my full name. You know, everyone will have a bit of a different way of doing it. Let me just focus on writing it for a second, and then I'll talk. So where some people may run into trouble is running out of paint, right? And that's a real thing. It can happen if you don't charge it enough. Which is why when I reverse engineer the way I do it, I like to first make sure there's enough water and enough quantity, and only then I'll start adding paint to darken it. That's how I like to do it. And as I mix, and this is something a lot of people do generally when painting, they use the very tip of the brush. Sorry, you can't see anything. They use the very tip of the brush to very timidly mix the color. I go full in with the base of the brush. It's very, very important, right? And so I start very wet. I bring in a bunch of water, and then I start darkening that water that I brought in. And once I have that exact consistency that I found with experimentation works well, that's when I move in and start writing. Now let's do another one. Let's do one in black this time. And then I'm going to give you a bonus way. This is, you know, I don't want this to be too much micro kind of explanation video, because this is really something you have to experience by yourself. But now that my brush is already pretty wet, I can just bring in paint directly from the well in here. Now the danger is, look at what happens if I will bring in too much paint, too thick of paint. So let's say something like what I have here. Not going to work really well, and let me show you why. I don't think, at least. Maybe I'll be surprised. But if I start signing this, see how the paint starts to really break. So this is the issue that many people have. It's also the paper's texture, but you see now, just from experience, I know is the more I write, the more it's going to break and be annoying. I don't like these edges here. I don't like that it looks like that. I like flow. So the basis for me is always make sure there's enough water and then move in. Now the risk, the other side, is if there's too much water, you're gonna get a signature that's very light, and you'll probably have to go over it again. Because remember, you're signing a complete painting. You won't always have like a light space to sign, so this paint has to be visible over existing paint. That's the one thing to remember. Sometimes I'll have to sign in these areas where it's really dark. Then I'll have a choice. Do I want to sign normal paint or opaque paint? And I'm going to show you that's the bonus thing I'm going to show. I'm dropping sweat here. It's very, very grueling exercise. But in any case, yeah, so I like to start with some wetness, make sure I have a base of wetness, and only then, and you see it by the way the paint moves, right? Let me show you in comparison. This is not a lot of movement. Not a lot of movement. Hopefully you can see this. This is more movement. See, there's wetness. If I bring more water, more. So it's a balancing act. That's basically it. Now, if I were to use way too much water, what I'll end up with is a signature that flows really well. And if it's too much, it's too flow, you just dab it on a paper towel. But what's going to happen is we're going to let this dry for a few seconds. Trying to sign fast because you don't want to see me just writing my name over again. As soon as this dries, you'll see it dries quite lightly because I had a lot of water here. And if you're doing this over a dark wash or multiple washes, it's just not going to be visible. Now, as this dries, it's going to look okay on white paper, but it's not, trust me, it's going to be way too light otherwise. Now, let me show you one more way, the way I like to do it with opaque paint. Now, I have this here. Let me get a dark paint. Okay, this will work. I just need something to paint over. So let me show you how I do that, and that's going to be kind of our final bonus-like tip. I like to use designer's gouache to do that. It's been a favorite of mine for a while now, and the only way I can really explain is to show you. So I'm starting with a certain amount of paint, and the thing is, gouache will be opaque, but as soon as you add water to it, it's going to be much, much less visible. It's going to be darker, essentially. So you have to tread carefully. So look at how I'm mixing it with the blue paint here on the palette, and look at the ratio, because I like to sometimes go with blue if it suits the painting, the dark area in the painting where I'm signing. Sometimes I'll go with a warm, but usually I go with a nice blue. And look at the ratio. I'm bringing a lot of gouache compared to how much of the actual blue paint I'm using. And then I can go ahead and sign this carefully. I'm going to shut up and just do it for a second, and then I'll explain if there's anything worth explaining. Okay, now look at what happens if I bring in too much water and paint, and it's very easy to do this. Very easy to make this mistake only because it's just not going to be as visible. Even if you bring in more of the blue paint, you're going to kill the effect because it's going to start being too dark, not light enough. This may actually work. We'll have to let it dry for a few seconds. Now, if you look at this, this is quite light. This is from a second ago. To me, that's not good. That's not going to be visible enough. Imagine this on top of like a dark layer. Even things are falling off my table here, left and right. But imagine like you won't be able, even here, it's going to be a bit too light. This paint, darker than the black paint you see here. Okay, so just have that in mind. Now look at this, right? It's not as visible as you'd want it. You still want it to be visible. The thing with gouache, you have to understand, I can just demonstrate it. As soon as it touches water, it's going to go darker. So if I just go ahead and do this, see? It reawakens it completely, okay? You can actually erase it quite easily that way, but just as a side note. But in any case, that's the ratio I use. Again, you'll have to experiment with this to find the right ratio. Sometimes I'll go with a lot of blue paint and a lot of opaque paint because I'm looking for a strong blue that is still light enough. We don't have the privilege of oil and acrylic paints where, you know, you just mix the exact color you want, you paint it opaquely over whatever you want. We don't have that, okay? So these are the kind of ratios. It's all based on experience. You're gonna have to play around with it a bit to find the perfect signature that the paint doesn't run out all the way till the end. If you have a short name, unlike me, you're in good luck, because it's going to be a little easier. Now, one thing I didn't really talk about is like how you write it. I mean, come on, it's your name and your handwriting. Write it the way you want, abbreviate it the way you want, design the letters the way that suits you. This is something that after so many times of me signing my paintings just ended up working for me. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Now, let me zoom out a bit. If you have been patient so far, I'm going to show you real quick a painting I'm working on. Oh, and I forgot to mention, right here you can see I'm auctioning another painting, the Alpine cabin. Check that out if you're interested in getting my painting. I'm going to talk about that a bit more in a second. Yeah, but I'll have to zoom out here. And let's see if it's even visible. Yeah, okay, so it's almost fully visible. So this is a painting I've been working on, very complex. I'll show you the details up close. I shared it in my stories, but like this is a big, it's gonna be a big trouble kind of thing. Reminds me of the paintings. Who's that artist? I forgot his name. He does these very detailed water paintings. I'll remember the second I finish this video. But in case, yeah. So you see tons of details. Gonna be quite a bit of a challenge. And I started with very thin washes just to show myself where everything is. So this is the water, this is the sky, this is the ground's a little warm. And what I'm going to do is gradually with thin glazes start working on this. The reason I'm using thin glazes is I'm almost using it as a mapping mechanism. So I want to see, because these shapes are so complex, if you're going to start dark, you'll have to work really fast to keep the flow going, and it'll be hard to tell where the shape is. So I like to use the paint almost as a mapping tool and just do a very thin coat that's accurate, because I have more time because it's wet paint, and then I know exactly where to paint the following darker washes. But of course, the colors and everything has to be on point and accurate to my vision at that stage already. It has to be the right blue, it has to be the right yellow, the right, greens, whatever it is. So just thought it would be fun to show you, give you a sneak peek of that. And yeah, I am auctioning this painting, the Alpine cabin. Painted it with you. One of my favorites from a live stream, I think, ever that I painted. Beautiful scene, very relaxing. Check it out. I will put a link below. I think right now it's on $50. So if you want to get a painting of mine for a relatively low price, I would say compared to anywhere else that you can get them, this is your chance. So bid to win. Feel free to if you're interested in that. I do appreciate whoever bid so far. Thank you so much. And yeah, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, leave a comment, subscribe. I will see you in the next video. Until then, take care.